This podcast contains potentially adult language, adult themes, definitely drinking, and possibly sexual context. Listener discretion is advised. Welcome to Drinking with Authors, the podcast. I'm your host, Erica Lance. My co-host today is C.R. Rice, and our amazing guest is Joe Filippone. Woo! Woo! There's a whole track that gets added to that. It makes it even more. Okay, let's talk about what we're drinking. I am super excited about this because today I get to announce our sponsor, which is Skunk Brothers Spirits. So Skunk Brothers Spirits is out of Washington State. It's actually named after their dad. It is a veteran-owned distillery, and I guess their grandfather used to make moonshine in the non-legal way, and now they're making it in a legal way. So it's super exciting. If you guys check them out at skunkbrotherspirits.com, there will be a coupon code. I'm hoping it's DWA, but check the notes on the podcast before you do. And today I decided to try their blueberry cinnamon cordial. So I'm going to pour that over ice like a boss, and their sponsor. And so I could get really drunk. This is, yeah. Anyway, so it's a sipping one. CR, what are you drinking today?
I not have anything festive. I am actually trying to be healthy. So I did green tea and vodka this time.
I love that you pretend to be healthy by putting stuff in the vodka and then calling it healthy. It makes me really happy that you do that. So
I try.
I'm healthy. I put a strawberry in my vodka drink. Hashtag healthy. Okay, what are you drinking, Joe?
I'm going with my favorite. I've got Jack and Wild Cherry Pepsi. So
that's exciting.
Yeah, I like Pepsi more than Coke. I like both, but I don't know. I've just always been more of a Pepsi boy. So I was like, let's just do that. So
I love it.
Sounds really good though, Erica.
By the way,
I want to try that.
This is fucking amazing. This blueberry cinnamon is amazing. Amazing. Skunk Brothers Spirits. Just look them up. Anyway, it's amazing. Okay.
I want to try the vodka and green tea one that CR is doing.
It's fantastic.
I think that'd be really cool. And that feels like, because I'm in LA, I'm in Los Angeles, and that feels like something that LA people would drink and like make a bit, like I could see like the Housewives of Beverly Hills like drinking it, and then all of a sudden it becomes like a big thing, or like all the little gays and WeHo start doing it and like it takes off. Like I could totally see that.
Yeah.
Okay, so when it does take off, you got to remember this moment.
Exactly.
And then I'm going to take credit for it.
Exactly.
You will, except for the green tea they'll manage to use in it is some like $45 bottle of green tea. Anyway, to make it bougie as fuck, that's what you're going to have to do. Okay, Joe, let's talk for a minute. What do you write for the fans out there?
So I mostly write erotica. That's kind of how I got whatever name that I may have in the author world. That's kind of what I'm known for. Erotica, erotic romance. Although my first novel that I put out was a young adult novel, and I always wanted to just write young adult and children's books and horror novels, because I love Stephen King, I love Anne Rice, V.C. Andrews, all of them. But I also love sex. I'm a Scorpio, so I mean, it's like, fuck it, right? Cheers.
Cheers.
But I've always been very pro sex, pro porn. I have a lot of friends that are in porn. I have a lot of friends that are escorts, that have been strippers, all of that stuff. And I've always loved the classic erotic novels. I love, like the story of Emmanuel, the stuff from the Marquis de Sade. That always just seemed like such a fun era to live in. I wish that I could have lived back then in France at a little cafe getting paid to write sex stories. So a lot of my friends suggested that I should write erotica because I also wrote plays and stuff like that. And they said, your stuff has like a lot of erotic undertones, and you're really good at writing like sexual tension and all that kind of stuff, and you just have a very sexy way with words and descriptions and all that stuff. So a friend of mine, she was like, you should write erotica, and I didn't even think that erotica was still a thing when she suggested it, because it wasn't like, this was before the whole 50 Shades of Grey and all that stuff came out. Like when I started writing, probably the only one that was really a big known author was Zane, and she was just writing urban erotica for the African American community. And I knew Zane's work. I was a huge fan of hers, and but other than that, I was like, erotica is just like stupid fan fiction online written by losers that live in their parents' basement. I don't want to do that.
Although we love everyone who writes fan fiction, disclaimer, you're a fan of DWA, you can be in your parents' basement. Just make sure you have some green tea and vodka.
I only say that
it is
because
classy.
I cannot write fan fiction. I only say that because I am a hater. I have tried to write fan fiction and mine is awful. So I just say that because I am jealous of people that can actually write fan fiction. So one night I was at home, it was midnight, and just for the hell of it, to prove my friend wrong that there was no market for erotica, I typed in on Google erotica resources for writers. And of course, my luck, the first thing that comes up was this website called the Erotica Readers and Writers Association. And I clicked it, and it had, books that were published, that were current, that were being published. It had publishers of erotica, and it had calls for submissions. And I was like, well, fuck me. Now what am I supposed to do? So I was like, okay, I will prove that I cannot write erotica. I will pick a call for a short story for an anthology. I will write something. I will not get accepted. They will write back, don't ever write in this genre again. You have no fucking clue what you're doing. Because I was still a virgin at the time too. So I yeah. So I wrote
spoilers.
This stupid little short story, and I sent it in, and then I forgot about it. And a couple months later, I got an email, we've accepted your short story, here's your payment, here's when it's coming out. And I was like, oh my gosh, okay. So it came out and people liked it. And I was like, well, this was kind of fun. And the theme of the anthology was fun. So I'm like, well, let me see if I can write another one. So I would just find these, calls for shorts on this website, and these anthology themes that sounded interesting to me, and I would just write it. And I started writing more and more and more, and I ended up publishing over 60 short stories, got published in various anthologies. And then people kind of started liking my stuff, and I would get these emails from these readers, and they'd be like, oh, I read your short story in this such anthology, and then I went to the library to try and find your book, but I couldn't find the book. Where is the book? How can I get the book? And I was like, there is no fucking book. I can't write I was like, I can't write like a full-length book. I can't do this. And then one of my publishers at the time, because I was publishing with different publishers and stuff, they were like, you should write a book. You should write, full-length erotic book. And I was like, I can't. I don't have an idea for that. So I put that aside, and I wrote my young adult book, and I got that published. But the erotica publishers and the erotica fans were still clamoring for this book, and one of my publishers gave me an idea for one. She came to LA for one of the erotica conventions, and she sent me a message on Facebook, and she said, I've known you, through Facebook and through your writing for a long time. I want to meet you face to face. And she was like, come down to this hotel in downtown LA. This is where we're all staying. And I want to, I'll buy you dinner. We can talk, we can have drinks, all of that. So I went and I met with her, and we sat down, and she was like, yeah, she's like, I want you to write a full-length book. She's like, and I have this idea. She's like, I want to do a gay version of the story of O, and I want to call it the story of Joe. She's like, but I can't find anyone to write it. Like, people, it's not good. The authors that I've asked and that have written stuff, it's not good. It's not good. And I was like, well, I do like the story of O. I've read it. I've seen the movie. That's one of my favorite classic eroticas, as I mentioned before. And I was like, okay, fine, I'll do it. And she was like, great. She's like, because we've published so many of your short stories. She's like, I feel like I kind of discovered you. She's like, so I kind of want my company to have the first book that's out. And I was like, okay, fine, whatever. It's not going to make any money.
No biggie.
Yeah. So I wrote that book, and people liked it. And I was like, well, okay, maybe I could do erotic novels. And it was kind of at that time too, I was like, I kind of didn't want to write short stories anymore, because I kind of felt like I had gone as far as I could with them. And I was kind of getting to the point where a lot of the ideas that I was having for these short stories, I was like, well, this is really a novel. Like, there's so much I want to get in. It's not working as a short story. So I think I just kind of needed that push to be like, yeah, you can actually do that. You can. Because I think like a lot of creative people, we kind of get in our heads and we're like, oh, well, what if I'm not as good as this person? Or no, I couldn't do this. Or we get like comfortable where it's like, well, I'm good in this space that I'm in, or I'm good just kind of doing this. Why do I want to take a chance? And I think that's just everyone, unfortunately. We've just kind of been programmed and conditioned to do that. But once my young adult novel came out, that came out a few months before the erotic novels.
Did you do these under the same name? I'm just curious.
No, they're all different names, because I write in so many different genres, and I wrote in so many different erotic genres that I had all these different names for whatever genre that I had. But when the young adult novel came out, my publisher for that actually submitted it to the Kappa Awards, and it got nominated for a Kappa Award for Best Young Adult Novel. And I was like, okay, that's kind of cool. Like, it's good enough, I'm a good enough writer to get nominated. So that kind of also gave me the confidence that I needed, because I was very young. I'm 35 now, and when I published my first short story, I think I had just turned like 18 or 19. And then my novel came out, I want to say I was around like 24, 25. So I was still like really unsure of myself, and having like all those like young people doubts about, oh, can I really do this, or whatever. So that, to have all of that stuff happen like so young, it really kind of helped get that confidence up to be able to do that. And now I've got, since then I've published like 7 novels, and I'm gonna be re-releasing a few of them, because unfortunately, like, they were indie publishers, so publishers went out of business and stuff, so some of my stuff isn't available anymore. But I want to re-release it and be like, hey, look how much I've grown as a writer, because I read that stuff now and I'm like, Jesus Christ, why did anyone think that this was good? Like, I'm so much better now, and
well, that's going to be the case. Better. It's like I say this all the time. Writing is like running. Like, when you start running for the first time, you're like, I'm going to run or jog or yogging if you're Ron Burgundy. And you start, like, you almost die. For either that, or you like totally kill yourself the first time and can't move like 2 days later, right? But after you do it more and more, you're just going to get better at it. I've never met a writer who hasn't gotten better Now, degree of better is up for grabs, but they've gotten better because you just hone your craft. You also, going through a lot of editing, you go, here are things I need to look for as I'm writing and starting to type words. Like, at least for me, when I start doing something that the editor has been like, hey, stop fucking doing that, then it's in my head. So when I start to do it, I'm like, and I have a little cheat sheet of things that I go, control F and go through my whole document to look for stuff and go, how many times did I say this? How many times did a character wink or whatever, or how many times did they do duck face? Somebody told me that was their thing the other day. Like, everybody's, making kissy faces. And I'm like, but you get better and you get more seasoned. And I think, regardless, Anne Rice said it best, rest her soul. I'm sorry we lost. 2021 was an asshole, Betty White.
Agreed.
Seriously, Anne Rice. But Anne Rice said something about Interview with a Vampire was when she wrote that book, like, she looked back on it and was like, whoa, but it was the best book she could have written at that time.
Exactly.
She didn't redo Interview with the Vampire as the movies came out, and now there's a TV show in the works, and people are going to read the book and get the audiobook. And I actually, when she passed, bought the audiobook again because I was like, I want to read, and I'm listening to it, and I'm like, oh, I remember why I like other parts of the comic books and stuff, because there's some stuff in there that's just like a little too much. And then, but she, her later stuff was much, much better. So I think that's just a thing. Sorry for the tangent. I've had a little blueberry cinnamon cordial, so
no, do it. I do the same thing. Like, I mean, I should have said this before we started recording. Like, I fucking talk a lot and I go off on tangents because of the way my brain works. Like, something will remind me of something else. So if I start to get long-winded, just be like, hey, fool, shut the fuck up. Like,
no, what you should do is after this, go back and listen to a couple that me and Erica have done together, because we'll start on one and then we're 25 minutes in and we're like, wait a second, what was the question? What did we just ask you? So like, it's natural. Yes.
Well,
yeah.
That's why we do this podcast the way we do it, because we're like, let's have some drinks. Who gives a fuck what we talk about? I don't care.
It's just talking with friends. But also the way that what you were just saying, Erica, I think it's also too, as authors and creative people, we have more life experiences now that we can draw off. Like I said, when I first started writing erotica, I was still a virgin. I hadn't fucked yet, and now it's like, I don't even want to say my body count now. Like, sorry, Mom, don't listen to this part.
Mom,
but
we need some earmuffs for this portion of the broadcast.
Exactly. It's like, I've had like all of those experiences now, and not just like sexual. Like, yes, like I've been to sex parties, and I've been like the person that's been brought into the couple, and I've been the other man with affairs that people have had, and I've been like the person that my straight friends want to experiment with, and I've been the one that my lesbian friends want to experiment with, and I've done like all of that. I've been married, I've been divorced, I buried my fucking ex-husband right before the lockdown happened, in 2020. I've had great relationships, gotten my heart broken, I've traveled more, I've met more people, all of that shit. Like, had some really shitty things happen, been abused by people in power in this industry, that I can draw off of, and seen people get abused by people in the industry here in LA, because I'm also an actor too. I'm an actor and a director, so I can a lot of my stuff focuses on people in Hollywood or actors acting, all of that shit, right?
Well, you say that, and what I think is the most interesting about that is, unless you've never looked at porn or never looked at sex, you can look at these things and get an idea of how it works, right? The logistical part of penetration or whatever the hell you're doing, right? I write erotica as well, so I just go, but the thing that you don't get unless you experience, and I'm very sorry for your loss, by the way, but the things that you don't get is the feelings, the emotion, the weird thought process that occurs that can make or break a character. Because it's, just sex for the sake of sex is what it is, but the actual feelings, the emotion, the weirdnesses, the trepidation, the moment you feel like, fuck it, I don't care, I'm just going to be me, the moment you're naked in front of somebody. Like, I think a lot of people don't realize, like, some people are great with being naked in front of people, right? I haven't been one of those people, I don't give a fuck. Like, I did theater.
Yeah,
you're naked in front of people all the fucking time, running, getting clothes back on and stuff. So you don't care. But the first time you're naked in front of somebody, you're sitting there going, oh my God, is this person judging me? And the first time, every time you're in front of somebody, you can still have that sort of thing depending on who you are, right? And people don't think about that necessarily. But also, if you're to the point where you're about to have fucking sex, nobody gives a shit for the most part. When you look,
not if you did it right.
Moment. Nobody cares. But you don't know that until you've been through the experiences that you're talking about, right? And I think that's
exactly.
Very cool. That's, I think, the part that gets added to the story is not just the experiences, but those feelings, those emotions, and then the reactions from the other humans that are involved with what you are going through. You can't write the affair very well, for instance, unless you've done something like that, right? You can't imagine what it's like. What is the other person doing? Anyway, there's lots we could go a path. Okay, so you started writing because you wanted to prove everybody wrong. I like that as the start of the story. You wanted to prove
he wanted to prove that yes.
Yeah.
Look at you doing that the opposite.
I love that. That's the first part. I started writing to prove to everybody I fucking couldn't write. So fuck you. Like,
right. And that's that's the story of like a lot of stuff that ends up happening, like even getting into directing. Everyone for the longest time, even fucking psychics here in California, would stop me on the street and be like, I need to give you a free reading, or, oh, you're gonna be a director, people are gonna know your names. And I'm like, yeah, whatever, I'm a fucking actor, I'm not gonna direct. So I started directing to prove everybody wrong, and then people like my fucking stuff, and I found out I was good at directing, and I kind of like it, and actors feel comfortable working with me, and I'm like, well, goddamn.
So what else do you not want to do? Just out of curiosity, because I think we should make a list of the things you don't think you're good at, so you can go try them, be brilliant at them, and then we can all hate you for it. I like that.
I know, right?
Great. So let's talk about, so you wrote Erotica. What is your young adult novel about?
So the young adult novel that I wrote, it was called Real Boys Kiss Boys, and it was just a gay romance novel. Two guys in high school that, one of them comes out and they fall in love. He falls in love with like the new kid at school. Like my main character was like, geeky little guy who was shy, didn't have a lot of friends, and then the new guy in school was like, cool, good looking, looks like a model, and he liked my main character liked him, and there was that instant connection. And I made the cool guy was like HIV positive in that, so I wanted to deal with that. And I because a lot of my friends, a lot of my friends are HIV positive, so I wanted to have that representation of like, just because you're positive, that doesn't mean that you can't fall in love, and that doesn't mean that you can't have a great relationship and fall in love with someone who's negative. And I think, unfortunately, just going off of what a lot of my friends who are positive have said, like that's something that they still have struggles with dating now in 2022, 2021, when they were telling me about this. Like they'll be on the dating sites, and when someone finds out that they're positive, even if they're undetectable, like the negative person will still be like, no, I don't want to date you, like that's too scary for me, I don't want to catch it. Or it's like they have problems, if they are about to hook up with someone and they disclose their status of like, I'm positive or I'm positive undetectable, and the person is negative, they'll say, no, 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 I don't want to hook up with you anymore. And I have a lot of friends that are negative that go off of that too. Like the idea of dating someone who's positive scares them, and it's like, as long as you're responsible and the person's taking care of themselves, and on their medication or whatever, like you'll be fine. So I wanted to show that, to do whatever little I could to end the stigma.
I think
And
that's
I've
great
always been,
because it's education. That's the biggest thing. And we see that now. There's a movie on Netflix called Don't Look Up. I don't know if you've seen it yet, but
it's on my list.
It is. I will just tell you, for me, there was so much funny parts, but so many cringes, because it's legitimately a representation of what's going on in society right now. Just completely like.
Well, then I'll just walk outside. I won't sit for an hour and a half and watch a movie.
Yeah, but and I'll tell you, the movie's fantastic. The whole premise is there's an asteroid coming to Earth and it's going to destroy it. And they have the science to prove that this is what the deal is. And then they take it to the government, and that's all I'm going to say about it, because I don't want to give it away. But what's interesting is that when it comes down to, even with what we're going through, in what's going on right now with COVID and stuff like that, and it's not the same, but we have this very much, a friend of mine said it, like, instead of listening to scientists or researchers or people who are actually educated on a topic, we're going to go on the internet and listen to our Facebook scientists to tell us what's actually happening. And it's so bizarre. And I kind of look at it and go, would you truly want to be with somebody who wasn't willing to educate themselves on a topic anyway? Because it's not just that.
Well, there's also people just in general who don't care. Like, there is a higher mass of people that don't care about educating themselves and choose to go to the internet or to listen to their friend because they saw something on TV, because there are a lot of people that watch TV and think it's real. Like, they think everything that you see on House or anything like that is real. And I remember going to school and, going to health class, and the teacher's basically telling you, if you know somebody who has HIV, they're dead. Like, you're going to get it like through contact, through whatever. So like, if you don't grow up and decide to research yourself into those things, then you only have the mentality of what you learned in school or what you heard from people. Nowadays, we know, like, it's the same thing, kind of not the same thing, but like you said with COVID, like, people are saying, oh, it's a government conspiracy. Okay, cool. But if you look at the science of it, it's the flu. And then you have the people going, no. It's like nobody is actually looking at the science of it all. So if you're like my generation, when in school, if you heard somebody had HIV, like, anybody in a 50-mile radius was at risk, but if you don't educate yourself and you don't do those things, then I understand the fear. I don't think it's right, but I understand the fear. And it's really sad that society doesn't want to continue to educate themselves.
I can say this because I'm old enough of this generation to go, I was there when AIDS started happening, because I'm 48 years old. So I was born in 1973, 1984, 11 years old, was a punk, but literally when you had to dye your hair with weird shit because there wasn't hair dye the color like Manic Panic. And I remember when AIDS started being talked about a lot. I grew up in Hollywood, California. I remember when AIDS started to be talked about, and it was like toilet seats. Like, there was all of this false stuff about how and what AIDS was, right? And there's a ton of movies and documentaries that realistically talk about this situation. But at the time, it was very similar. The panic was crazy. And now you get yourself educated about this and how it works and how you can get it, how you can't get it, how you can prevent it. I love that you did that, though. I absolutely love that you did that, because it is about, whether it's about making an emotional response for somebody, just to have some, take away from fantasy from their everyday life, just because life can be hard, which erotica books and stuff like that do, or making a social impact. That's what being an author is about. It's about making a change for somebody. I think that's fantastic.
I like that you did it at that age too.
Also, one of the reasons why I want to do it is, like, I've always been very big with HIV research and the advocacy. Like I've been a part of groups that have, you know, tried to do more research for it. I've done like the AIDS walk and all of that. Because my cousin Donnie died of AIDS in the 90s. So I was born in 86. And, you know, my family is Italian and Catholic. So the fact that there are so many, and I'm bisexual, I'm openly bisexual. Like I always say, like, I don't care what's between your legs. It's all about chemistry. If we're vibing, we're fucking. Like if we're into each other, like
I just love the eloquent way that you speak. It just speaks to my soul.
So you know, you can imagine this, you know, my family that has had, especially in the 80s and the 90s, there was a lot of my cousins that were gay and openly gay and that got married in the 90s to their partners and stuff. But my cousin Donnie had AIDS and he died from it. But I remember as a kid, even though I was very, very young, you know, I was born in 86. So when Donnie died, I was probably maybe like 5, 6, 7 years old when he was at the last years of his life. But I still remember, you know, my Aunt Marie and my Uncle Shorty, they would always say that Donnie wasn't at functions because he was sick or he had the flu or he wasn't feeling good. Like they never said it. And I wasn't allowed to be in the same room with him the last years of his life, and he was at home. They kept him at home because, again, like the shame, they didn't want him in the hospital like with the other AIDS patients, so they kept him in a room. And you know, I'd go over there with my mother and father to visit my aunt and uncle, but I was never allowed to be in the same room with Donnie because they weren't sure still how it was passed on. And so I remember, like, you know, when my father would go in the room to see him, you know, he put on the gloves and the mask and, you know, all of that. And I remember, you know, his doctors, Donnie's doctors, would tell my Aunt Marie and my Uncle Shorty to give him Pedialyte because they thought that, okay, you give Pedialyte to these little kids to build up their immune systems, and now you've got these men where their immune systems are down. Maybe there's something in the Pedialyte that will build up their immune system. So they were always giving him Pedialyte and all of that. But I remember when he died, you know, my family made sure that nothing in the obituary was mentioned about AIDS, HIV. They had to fight to even have like a, you know, a funeral in the church and to get him buried, you know, with the family in the Catholic cemetery. So I just kind of, I think I've just kind of always been a big advocate for the research and the knowledge because of that, because it was so close to home, you know. And I even though I was so young, like I saw how it devastated not only my aunt, uncle, but my whole family. And I was like, you know, I remember like just being a kid and not really understanding it, not even really understanding like, why is there like this shame? Why, you know, why is he always so sick? Like, why, you know, my family's been very interesting for me as a actor and a writer, because we've had so many things. You know, my Uncle Johnny committed suicide, and in, you know, Catholic Italians, for someone to commit suicide, I mean, that's a big fucking no-no. So I remember when that happened. But it was just all the stuff that I can draw on, like for my writing, for my acting, for all of that.
Wow. No, I think it's amazing. We have to take a quick break. We will be right back. I hate on that subject, but we will be right back with Drinking with Authors.
Sample locally sourced, quality distilled spirits in the beautiful Columbia River Gorge. At Skunk Brothers Distillery, we're family-owned, brewing small batch grain to bottle spirits, just like our grandfather did back in the Prohibition era. From handcrafted bourbons and moonshine to flavored blends and cordials infused with local fruit. Join us for a tasting tour and buy Skunk Brothers Spirits straight from the source.
It's all in the family at Skunk Brothers Spirits, located in Stevenson, Washington.
Okay, we're back. So, you are a busy human being. So, you do writing, you've written plays and screenplays, and you do acting, and you do directing. Okay, so we covered erotica, we covered young
The young
adult.
adult.
Yes. Now let's go to horror. So talk a little bit, because that's my other genre. I write two genres.
Cool.
I write humorous erotica and I write horror. So I write horror and horror. I straddle both. So let's talk about horror.
My third novel was a horror novel. It was called In the Tarot, and again, that publisher closed down. They were so cool. I love that publisher. I've loved all my publishers that have taken a chance on me. So I love stuff that has to do with the occult and witchcraft and tarot and voodoo and all of that. I guess I technically can be classified as a witch because I have a witch name, and I've done like the Wiccan festivals with some of my friends, and I've done like, you know, money spells and all that, and I've participated with some of my friends that do, you know, voodoo and Santeria and sex magic and blood magic. Like, I've been a part of all of that. I have such an interesting eclectic group of friends. Like, I'm so fucking lucky. Like, thank you to my parents that raised me not to be judgmental and to just like everyone unless they're, you know, truly evil.
Wiccans throw some of the best ceremonies. I'm just going to say, in the great scheme of religious ceremonies, Wiccans usually involves wine. I'm a big fan of Wiccans and Druids. I'm a fan of both of them. Let's summon some earth spells and shit with some wine and some robes, maybe. You know, I love that shit.
Yeah, no, I'm so into that. So I wanted to combine that with, I also love like the carnivals and amusement parks and sideshow stuff. So I kind of wanted to combine that. So the horror novel was about these three friends who are at this carnival, and they go to a fortune teller, and she tells their, you know, fortune and all that with the tarot cards. And I had this stuff where it's like one of the like characters from the tarot cards would like come to life and fuck with the kids. One of the best reviews that I got from that book was a friend of mine who read it because I had, I guess technically it would be a forced seduction or rape scene between a female skeleton and one of the guys. Like, she was like riding him and all that stuff. And my friend who read it, he was like, yeah, he's like, that rape scene between Jesse and the skeleton, like, man, that kind of fucked me up because I've never read anything like that in any kind of horror novel. And it was just so like, fucked up, Joe. You're so awesome. Like, that was so cool, man. Like, I could totally see this like fucking chick skeleton like fucking this dude and like riding him. I was like, thank you. So
I tried.
Yeah. And I've also published some short horror stories in anthologies. I have like a couple vampire short stories that I've done, some zombie stuff. I did some Christmas short horror stories, like I had Santa Claus be like a zombie, and all that, because I love horror. I've always loved horror novels. I've always loved horror movies, scary TV shows, you know, Are You Afraid of the Dark, Tales from the Crypt, Ghost Stories, that Rip Torn hosted back in the day, you know, the Friday 13th films, even the old classics, you know, the Wolfman, Dracula, Bride of Frankenstein, Freaks, you know, all that shit. Halloween's always been my favorite holiday. I was supposed to be born on Halloween, but came a week early. So I guess it's just like kind of in my blood to do that. But I've always loved, in terms of authors, you know, Stephen King. I was reading like Stephen King when I was in middle school, and was always reading his stuff. And wanting to be a horror writer, I always want to be like the next Stephen King. I always wanted to write stuff like him. The Goosebumps stuff and the Fear Street stuff with R.L. Stine. I think I read everything that man wrote when I was in elementary school and middle school. Like, I never missed one of his books. I've always loved to be scared. You know, Anne Rice with the the Interview with the Vampire, and the Mummy novel that she put out, and even her erotica. You know, I think a lot of people forget that she wrote the Beauty Chronicles, and they're so
I love those books. A
Yeah.
lot of people were like, wow. Because I will say it was a whole level. And then right after she published those, she went very religious, which I thought
Yeah.
was interesting.
And I like her religious stuff too. I know a lot of people were like, oh, you know, and I know a lot of people, you know, have their problems or whatever with religion, but even when all is said and done, even, you know, with me saying like, you know, yes, I'm a witch, I practice spells and stuff, at the end of the day, like, I'm still Catholic, and I still consider myself Catholic, even though I haven't been to a church in like goddamn like 10 years. You know, I know, like, I would fucking walk into the door, the lightning would probably come down on my head, you know. But you know, a lot of people are shocked to find that out. Like, I pray. You know, I've read the whole Bible cover to cover. I find it interesting. I find religion interesting. I am about to start reading the Diary of Sister Faustina. Just the other day, since it was the Solemnity of Mary, like, I was posting all of that on my social media, like, you know, pray for us and all of that. Like, I still have, you know, I fucking fight with God. Like, I yell at him. We've gotten into arguments over shit. So
I fight with God. That is actually the name of that sounds like the name of a great book. I'm just saying. I fight with God.
That'll be the title of the Lifetime TV movie they make starring Della Reese as Joe Filippone. That's always my big joke. I've said that for years. I always said if they ever did that, like, I wanted her to play me, and then the bitch had to up and die and fucking ruin my joke.
Well, she's still play you. You write about zombies. Just saying.
Exactly.
It's potentially a thing.
Exactly.
Zombie Della Reese. Just throw that out there. She could play you. I think that's a fucking awesome thing. Okay, so you do all of these things. When you actually started writing, what was it like, besides friends, obviously? How much fan interaction have you had?
When I was really on my writing and like putting out new short stories like almost monthly, and you know, new novels every few months, because like I said, I think we had talked about in the break when we weren't recording, I haven't written in a long time because I've been so busy with acting. And then when I think I have time to go back and finish all of these, you know, ideas and manuscripts and really have the time to do it, I'll get like an acting job or something that takes me away from it. But I had a lot of people who would friend me on Facebook, follow me, you know, on whatever, because they read my stuff, or they'd email me with you know, just praise that they liked my stuff. I mean, it wasn't huge. Like, I'm not a celebrity. I'm not like well known in any of the industries that I do.
I
like,
would just say you are a celebrity. It's just the rise to fame. I say that to every author. The moment you publish something, you're a celebrity.
I like that.
It's true. I mean, doing acting, whatever, you may not be, you know, whatever, Tom Cruise or something. Well, not that anybody should want to be Tom Cruise, but
yeah,
you know, that level, but you definitely are a celebrity. You have fans. Did you have any weird interactions? Did you go to any events as an author?
I have never been to any events. I'd like to one day. I think it'd be fun because for me, like, I will talk to anybody. Like, when I have people email me or message me on social media, like, I'll talk to them. I'll, you know, ask them like how they're doing or whatever, you know. And even after the initial thing that, you know, when they write to me, like, if I'm on my messenger on Facebook and I see that they're on or whatever, like, I'll message them and be like, hey, how are you? How have you, you know, I haven't talked to you in a while. What's new or whatever. But even some of the fans that I've had that have wanted to be writers, or even my fans with like acting and stuff, like, if they ask me for advice, like, I'll give them, you know, advice. Like, I'll read their shit and give them notes and feedback. And I don't mean shit like it's bad. Like I just say shit for everything. You know what I mean? But I've had
Well, I'm
people
sure
do that.
some of it is shit and some of it's good. That's the way it works.
Yeah, but it's like I'll try and like, even if it is like actual shit and awful, I'll try to like steer them in the right direction. But going back to your question about like weird fan interactions, I mean, I've gotten death threats from people.
What?
Oh yeah. Yeah. I've, been
That's
told
a
that I'm
first.
gonna, like,
Okay.
I was just thinking, like, out of all of these, I don't think I've ever heard that.
Yeah, I've been told that I'm gonna like burn in hell for the stuff I write, the stuff that I've acted in, the people I know. I was told once that I'm responsible for all the evil in the world, and it's because of me that we have stuff like AIDS and cancer and school shootings and rape and all of that. So I'm sorry, everyone, for that. I was just having a really bad day when I released that stuff into the world.
I was going to say that's really impressive. I mean, talk about celebrity. I mean, if you have that much power, you're more of a celebrity than Tom Cruise is. I have been like cyber stalked by people that like I've had the obsessive fans where they've read some of like the romance or the erotica, and they'll be like, I know that you were like writing about me and writing about us, and I know like we're meant to be together, and I love you, and I think you're so amazing, and I want to marry you, and I'd move out to California to be with you, blah 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 blah.
That's when you go, oh, I just moved to Illinois.
Yeah. So that's been kind of scary. Sometimes when that happens, I've had to block people that get very obsessive like that. I've had people when I've been in relationships, they've been like, oh, you don't really love this girl or this guy, like you're supposed to be with me. Like I've had people threaten like past girlfriends and boyfriends. That's why, thank God, like the guy that I'm with now, he's not on social media at all. And I've posted like a couple photos of us on social media, but I haven't said his name. I've only said to some very close friends like what he does and all of that. But that's kind of one of the reasons why I've kind of kept my current relationship kind of like secret. And not secret, but I just don't, I'm also not like one to like really post about relationships on social media that much, because most of the people I know that always do that, where it's like every other goddamn post is them, with their boyfriend or girlfriend. They're like, oh, my heart, my this, my that, blah, 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 blah. I'm like, yeah, you guys aren't really fucking happy. Like you're putting this on. If you've always got to say this, like,
well, I think it's interesting is that, I remember MySpace in the start kind of these kind of things, right? Because MySpace was before Facebook, which was supposed to be a platform to find unknown music artists.
Yeah.
MySpace, right? I think, it's interesting for social media because people ask me, as authors, there's a degree of social media you need to be doing as the celebrity of the author to get your work out, to interact with fans, do all that stuff. People who post too much personal information on social media is ridiculous to me. Like I use it as a cheap and easy way to tell my family maybe some piece of news that I don't give a shit that people hear, where I don't have to send them all texts or something like that. Like, here's the thing, this is all. Like, I don't post all this stuff on, because I look at what people do and how much they do it. And especially you're seeing all of these crimes against people who are influencers and stuff that are sharing everying. And you
turn
just
your location off. Do not share your location every time you take a picture.
Like, I will only check in to a place after I've left. Like I
mean like when you can post a picture, if you don't have your settings right, it'll tell you, it'll share exactly where you took that picture. Like that's not safe.
Yeah.
Why is that even necessary?
Yeah. But it's like if I go to like a movie or I go to a concert or go out to eat, like sometimes I'll post that like 2 or 3 days later and then I'll check in. of like, yeah, I was here like 5 days ago, or do that. I'll never do that while I'm there. And if I'm with a group of friends and they like do a, you know, a selfie and then they're gonna post, like, I'll say like, don't tag me until tomorrow. Like, don't say that I'm here now. Because I've had friends that are actual influencers and like actual like well-known people that, you know, they'll do something, they'll check in at like a concert or they'll check in at the mall, and then all of a sudden like everyone's there, like their fans are there, and people, you know, people watch, and people, I mean, you never know.
Yeah. Well, some of those people, not to your begging for, do that to have everybody show up and ogle over them in the location. You know,
Oh yeah,
did you ever
I had a friend who used to do that. He would call restaurants that he was gonna the if he was gonna be at a restaurant or someplace, he'd call the paparazzi and say he was there, and be like, oh yeah, I'm gonna. Yeah, he wouldn't ever say but he'd be like, oh yeah, so and so is gonna be here at this time, blah blah blah. So the paparazzi would be there when he would arrive.
Yeah, no. Did you ever see the movie Soap Dish?
Yes, it's been a while, but yes.
Okay, one of my favorite scenes is Sally Fields, the actress of Soap Dish. She goes to the mall with Whoopi Goldberg, who's her friend, and then right in the middle of the mall gets Whoopi to yell, "Oh my God, it's Blah!" Just so she can sign autographs to feel better about herself for a couple hours.
Yeah,
That's a good friend right there.
It's a good friend, but it's can be dangerous because you never know who's out there looking at things. Okay, so I see like a ton of books behind you. You have them all facing the other direction. I'm sure that's for a reason. But you talked about reading. Are you still an avid reader, even though you have all this stuff going on?
Oh yeah, that's one of the reasons why I love the lockdown, and why I'm sorry people like hoping for another one that goes longer, because that's all I did was I read. I got through like all my books, and like, yeah, I've got so many books around. Like, people come into my room and they're like, oh my God, it's like being in a bookstore. It's like, you know, being in a library. Because I love to read. I love to read anything and everything. Again, because I like to be educated. I like to learn things. Even if I hear something, you know, I don't know, it could be about West Nile virus. And if I don't know anything about that, I'll like Google it. I'll go onto Wikipedia and be like, well, let me find out about this. You know, even like with Omicron, I was like, well, I don't know anything about this new variant. Let me see what it is, because I want to be educated. I'll even see like news articles about shit that, you know, my friends post about not even just the pandemic, but about anything. And I'll like Google that and try to read everything that I can on there. And I like to get both sides of the story. Like, I'm always very interested in like, you know, what other people think about things. That's why even watch, I'm probably gonna lose like half my fan base, and like most of your listeners are gonna click off after this. I have friends that are very like heavy conservative Republicans that voted for Trump and that fucking love him.
Oh
And
no, I think we all have.
I think
people in our
everybody
lives.
does.
And
Yeah.
I am still friends with them and will have conversations about their political views because I'm interested in that. I want to know what makes them click. And I think that's why they're friends with me, because they want to know what makes me click. So I will read stuff from Fox News, or I will read stuff from very, very conservative publications and very, very liberal publications. I like to think that I'm somewhere in the middle. I'm not a Democrat or a Republican. I'm a member of the Peace and Freedom Party. And there's some stuff that I believe in where I lean more conservatively. There's stuff I believe in where I lean more, you know, liberally and stuff like that.
Well, and I think that's what is healthy out there. I mean, you know, I moved to North Carolina, but I go back and forth between Florida all the time. And like, I had a news article yesterday that said it has the highest number of cases of COVID that it's ever had. It had 76,000 cases in one day. You know
Wow.
what I mean? But I can tell you, being up here in North Carolina and other states, and I have friends that are in California and friends that are in New York and other places, like the lack of communication, even within our country, is not good,
Yeah.
right? And how things like I had friends that were in Boston and New York that came down to Florida and were like, what the fuck is happening here? Because in Florida, COVID isn't happening, right? Like
I
I
was in
say that, but
Florida. Yeah.
yeah, it's not happening.
Yeah.
It's, it's this
I
pretended
don't think
thing.
it's that. I think it's like, look, scientifically speaking, you've either had it, been exposed, or are currently carrying it. There's nothing you can do about it. So Florida's like, let's do this. Let's live our lives. If this is, I live in Florida. That's why I'm saying this. Like, I'm here right now.
Oh, okay.
So like, it's yeah. So it's one of those where like, I went to the store today and we have all the snowbirds down right now. So like you have all of the older people there that are yelling at the younger people for not wearing masks while they're not wearing masks. So I'm just like, dude, like, it's Florida just is like it has to be like, I know New Hampshire is that live free or die, but like it's Florida because Florida will just balls to the walls. You live your life.
No, it's true, but it's interesting because when you look at being polarized on a topic, right, you're not listening. And I think the biggest problem is, and you brought up religion earlier, I don't think religion is a problem until you're trying to enforce your religion on somebody else, or telling them they're wrong for having whatever belief or lack of belief system that they have. I just actually had this conversation with a family member of mine who asked me questions around mine. And I was like, I'm going to answer these, but the fact is if you start judging me for what I'm answering here, it's a problem, because this is you're asking me a question, like, but I think, I don't know. Anyway, we can get spun on that topic epically. Let's talk. So you've been reading in lockdown. Let's talk about when you are writing, like, what is your process like when you actually sit down with all your books that are facing the wrong direction? What is your writing process like? That's the last time I'm going to mention it.
No, I mean, it's bad because it's like when you come into the room, they're fine. So this is the door to my room. So they come in so people can see it. I'm like behind the bookshelf. I'm in the master bedroom of my apartment. I've got 2 roommates. Whatever.
You live in LA, that's a thing. Welcome to big cities.
Yeah. My process when I'm writing. This is so hard because I don't like outline. I've tried that, but I always deviate from the outline because I kind of like to have my characters speak to me. But I just kind of think of the world that they live in, and I really try to think of the main character and just try to put myself in their shoes and know everything I can about my main character, even if it doesn't come into the book. Like, I will know, their favorite color, what they like to eat, how exactly they like their coffee, what toilet paper they use, all of that. And when I know that precisely and I can get that precise with them, and I know exactly what day it is in the world that I'm creating, then I'll sit down and write. And
it's interesting you say that, because that's an acting thing.
Yeah.
That's an acting thing.
Yeah.
Like, people don't realize, most actors, I did acting earlier in my life. It's been a while, but one of the acting teachers that I worked with was talking about, like, when you walk on stage, of course, we're wherever the fuck we are, in the break room, whatever, makeup, having somebody fucking tie a corset on you or something. And you walk out on stage, well, that's where you were. But he was always like, you have to think about where you are, why you were there, what your emotional state, what happened right before you're walking into the scene. Go into long acting class here. But it's interesting you said it like that, because that reminds me a lot of how you create the character in your acting. Because unless your character is written on a book or something like out of a book or something like that, most of the time you don't get all this hellacious backstory. You have to create it.
And the interesting thing is, when I'm writing, like, I see my story and my work in my head. like a movie. So I'm just writing what I'm seeing. I don't know if that's the same with other authors. I haven't had this conversation with them, but I'm basically like, I'm like, okay, what do I see? And as this fucking movie is going through in my mind, I'm writing it down. So I don't know, maybe that's a sign of early schizophrenia or like craziness, but that's just how I am.
I think a lot of pantsers are like that. Just from two people who are on this with you that are pantsers,
yeah.
you know, that's how I see it. Like it plays before me. Like I know where my story's beginning and where it's ending. I don't know everything necessarily in between, but that's how I write. I don't write an outline. I write some bullet points, things I want to cover in it, right? But then it plays out like a movie.
It's gonna end. I always know the ending to everything I write, and that's always a certain. I don't always know how it's gonna start, but I always know how it's gonna end, and so then it's just getting there. And I don't know if this is just the actor in me too, but a lot of times I'll act out stuff, or I'll say the dialogue out loud just to make sure that it sounds right and that it sounds real.
Yeah, no, I did the same thing. I actually do that intentionally so that I have the conversation that I'm writing, because otherwise conversations can sound really dumb.
Yeah.
When I'm reading them, because I go, nobody talks like that. Who the hell would say it like that?
Yeah.
And it's so funny when I say that I don't outline. Some of my like other author friends, they're like, oh my God, how can you not outline? How can you not have it all planned out, you know, from this point A to point A, you know, point B and all of this. And I'll see my friends' outlines and they're so like beautiful. And I'm like, I wish I could do that. But you know, the funny thing, as an actor, I don't make choices. And when I said this to a group of my of actor friends the other day on Zoom, so many of them were like, what? Like their mouths were open, because I will never like say, like when I'm learning my lines or rehearsing, be like, I want to say this line like happy or sad or blah 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 blah. What I do, because my training is just being in the moment and going off your instincts, I'll just learn my lines, but the first time that I say my lines out loud is when I'm on set with the other actors. And I never make choices because I never want to get stuck in that same thing. So I've always wondered if as a writer, I do that same thing of like never wanting to get stuck of like, oh, well, in chapter 3, they've got to do this because I've written it down like this. You know, what if in chapter 2, my character makes a fucking choice that surprises me, and then chapter 3 has to be fucking rewritten? You know, then what am I going to do? Have writer's block because the fucking character fucked it all up?
So when you start writing, do you start at chapter 1 and go to the end?
Yeah.
There's
I'm the only one that does it. Chelsea, you are literally the only human I know that does what you do. Okay, you're literally the only one. So
I thought you were going to be on my
team. There are sometimes where I'll write down like dialogue or a scene where I'm like, okay, this isn't going to happen. I'll put this in later. But it's very rarely where that later ever comes in. Like if I start writing out of order, I won't use that stuff because I've written something earlier that'll fuck it up. But I know other writers that do that write out of order and all of that, but I can't do it. I have to go from beginning to end.
I'm the beginning to end kind of person. Chelsea, it's admirable what you do. I've told you that. Yeah. Like I've seen Chelsea's process, which just causes my OCD to go into fucking somersaults. But yeah, no, I'm linear on it. Not that I won't go back and add stuff. Like if I think of something really brilliant near the middle or the end, and I'm like, okay, go back and like add that in. I'll absolutely do that.
So how do you do that though? Starting from beginning to end. So I understand knowing the end. Like, so you said you always know how your book ends. I always know, like, I think a lot of authors do. Like you, for the most part, you may not know the exact details, but you know how you want it to end. So as you're writing from chapter 1, what do you do when you have an idea of something that's going to happen in the future? Do you not have that? Do you just like write down and go straight through and the ideas come as you write? Or do you not have those moments where like you're writing like, oh, they're walking through the park and you're like, oh my God, I'm going to have them blow up this house. like, but it has nothing to do with what you're doing right then. So how exactly what exactly is that process?
This is gonna sound like I'm not answering the question, but I never start writing until I know how it's gonna start. So
Right.
sometimes, like, I'll know how it's gonna end, but I may not know how it's gonna start for like maybe a couple of days. So I won't even write until that beginning is like, oh, okay, now I know what sets this off. Now I know how they get to this ending. Does that make sense? Did I kind of answer?
No, it does. It's just, it's so,
I kind of start from
it's
I
fascinating
kinda,
the different ways you see people writing, like their process, and then trying to figure out how exactly they do it. It's fascinating because mine's completely messed up. So like the fact that like Erica, she does the same thing. She starts at like, chapter 1 and she goes right through, and I've tried it and I can't do it. So the fact that so many people do that, it's mind blowing. And it seems like the much easier way to do it. So I always try to figure out how you guys do it.
a lot of times I'll be like, how do I get them to this ending? I'll be like, okay, I know, I'll just take it from something that I'm working on now. Like it's like, okay, I know at the end my main character is gonna like commit suicide and do an overdose of pills because she's the only person left in the world and she's been exposed to every single fucking disease that we had and there's no one else around and she wants to commit suicide to be with her love who was murdered. I'll be like, okay, I know that's how it's gonna end. What got her to this point? And then it's like, I'll just be like, I'll see different scenes from this book in my head. I'll be like, oh, okay, she did this and she was fucking chased. Okay, and then she had to murder this guy because he tried to like fucking mug her. Okay, I got that. Oh, okay. She saw her boyfriend get murdered because he was this race and he was murdered by bigots. Okay, I got that. Okay. Oh, okay, she's a fucking actress who did all these action movies.
So you actually work from the end back?
Sometimes. Sometimes I'll know an idea and I'll get it and I'll be like, okay, this is how it fucking starts. Like this person came out of the water because they drove their car into it and they passed out at the wheel and they just woke up underwater and they had to swim to it. Okay, I know that's how it's gonna start. Let's see where it fucking goes. Okay, type. It just kind of depends. For me, it's like story to story. Sometimes I know the ending. There's been some stories that I've written, some ideas I've had where I've known the middle. And I don't know how the fuck they got to the middle and I don't know where they're going after that. But I'm like, okay, I see this scene. This is why sometimes I hate being me. Like, I'll get an idea, I'll see a photo, I'll hear someone say something that will spark an idea, and then it's just like, okay, how do I get to that line, that picture, that idea, whatever the fuck it is. So a lot of times
every artist, no matter what you do art-wise, I think everybody kind of has a little bit of that.
So a lot of times it's just forcing myself to fucking have a beginning. And just knowing that I can go back and change it. Be like, okay, in this world, I'm fucking God. Like.
Well, I think the important part is to remember what is the story you're trying to tell. And sometimes there's connective tissue. That's my biggest thing is like, I can think of major things, but it's the connective tissue of how you get through there and how much of it do I need to include for the reader to understand what's happening. Because when I started writing short stories, I left some of the connective tissue out.
Yeah.
Because I was like, okay, I'm keeping this short. But then I realized, okay, and that's how I ended up in bigger and bigger books. But I'm one of those authors and that can actually write short stories. Because I know a lot of authors that can't fucking write a short story to save their fucking life.
It's like doing a short film.
Yeah. Like, hi, you have 2,500 words. Like a lot of people are like, no fucking way. I can't tell a story in 2,500 words. But you have to remember that a book is a series of, even if it's over one incident, and you can write a book about an hour in time, right? But there's a lot of things that have to happen in that hour of time, right? There was the TV show 24 that was going over 24 hours, right? But so you're writing about a certain period. Well, how much connective tissue do you have between that versus a short story where you're taking this little tiny sliver out and you don't have to tell everybody where everybody came from and what their fucking hair color is and all that stuff, unless somehow it's important to the story. And then you don't have to tell them where the hell it goes. You're literally going, here's this one scene. You don't have to resolve anything. But people, I know a ton of people. I've had so many author friends that are told to write a 5,000 word story and they turn in a 15 or 20,000 word story. And I'm like, okay, now that we're going to cut this to shit, what story were you trying to tell? Because this is about to be butchered. It has to.
I think short stories are so much harder.
Yeah.
Than doing the longer ones. I have word count issues like by going over anyways. So like to do like Erica in the 5,000, I'd be screwed. I'd be like, here's my 20 chapter book. Condense it, friends. Because there's a talent to being able to do something like that. And the people that do those anthologies, I like to read them. I think they're a lot of fun because you do get so much information that you forget about the fact that you don't know the small details. So you get to use your imagination more and they don't matter. But then you get to the end of it and you're like, are you kidding me? Like, that's it?
Yeah.
What the hell? So then I have a lot of times I read the anthologies that I want a full book. Like you were saying with the people that do with yours, I want the full book. Like, I feel like you just gave me a synopsis of it. I could never do it. That's a serious talent.
Well, it's true. It's true. And sometimes it works for the disadvantage of those of us that can write short stories that are like, and I'm done. That's all I need to tell on this story. And moving on. Okay, so Joe, that we're at the end. What advice would you give writers out there? Or artists? I'm going to actually ask you artists because you span many different things.
I would say do the stuff that speaks to you. And do the stuff that you like to see and that you enjoy consuming as someone who enjoys reading, you know, painting, watching movies, any of that shit. Because if you try to do something just because it's popular or just because you see this like TikTok person or this Twitter person did it and they got, you know, 1 million followers and all this money and this brand deal, and if you try to emulate that or recreate that, it's not going to work for you because it's not speaking from your soul and it's not speaking from your heart. So that's why I think I found the biggest, you know, success and fame from the erotica and from the sex stuff, because I'm very passionate about that shit. And I want to make it less taboo and show that maybe people that are in polyamorous relationships or taboo relationships or that do kink, you know, all the stuff I write about are not evil. They're not dirty. They're not, you know, all this negative stuff that's put onto it. That's why as a director, the stuff that I have the greatest success directing is extreme horror and underground stuff and stuff that's really fucked up, because that's the kind of horror movies I like to watch. I like watching extreme horror. I like watching exploitation horror. I like watching the Asian horror that's like fucked beyond, you know, belief. So that's why I create that. As an actor, the stuff that I have the most joy doing is the darker characters, because I like watching movies and watching actors that go into that darkness, because I think that's really interesting and fascinating. So do what you like. You'll find the audience, you'll find the success. You may not make a lot of money, but you'll probably make enough to be working at your art. And I think that's a fucking success.
Very cool. Okay, where do people find your books, my friend?
All over. So I've written in different pen names and all of that. So if you go onto Amazon and you just type out my name, Joe Filippone, you'll find a lot of my stuff. You might be able to find some of my short stories if you do my pen names Garland or Garland Sheffield, Cheffield, or my pen name Tama Finland, because if you can't tell from the poster, I'm a big Tom of Finland fan, so I feminized it. THOMMAFINLAND. I've got an erotic novel published called The 13 Acts. I use the name Desire Tyler under that. So if you just type in 13 Acts Desire Tyler on Google, you'll find that. I've also got, surprisingly enough, this is one of my most popular series, my Incest Series. I wrote that because, again, I wanted to prove people wrong that it wouldn't sell and that I couldn't do it. And now I get people writing me suggestions of the type of incest they want to see me write about. But if you type in Fetisha, FETISHA, Lot's Cave, LOT''SCAVE, you'll find my author page from Lot's Cave, and you'll be able to get the so far 3 books that are in this series. I'm hoping to come back when I have the time to write more of the series, because it was kind of fun to write them.
Very cool. No, totally. Hey, there's an audience out there.
Yeah.
There is something exciting about taboo things, and I think that's why erotica took off the way it did, because for so long it was like for lack of better words, like in the closet, like people did it, but they didn't actually say anything. And then when it came out, everybody was like, all right, we're cool with this now. So then people are just getting a little crazy.
I had so many of my friends who had to write under pen names because they would have been fired from their jobs if they would have found out, or they had to keep it a secret from their families. I wrote under pen names because I wrote under so many different genres. I never wanted someone who wouldn't be into something that I was writing to find it and then get like mad or offended or whatever. Like, I never wrote under a pen name because I was trying to keep it a secret. I'm so fucking open. Even like, you know, whatever, everybody knows about this. I've worked in porn, in non-sex, non-nudity roles. I've never fucked on camera. I've never been, you know, actual fucking. I've done simulated stuff in my, like, mainstream and stuff. But again, I have friends that are porn directors, and when they would do the features, they'd be like, Joe, you're an actor. Why don't you do this role that doesn't require any nudity or sex? I think it'd be fun. I'd be like, okay, sure. You know, get paid like, you know, some money for a day's work and get to work with my friends and all of that. Fucking fun. That's a big fucking joke. I've only taken my clothes off in mainstream stuff, and I've only done simulated sex scenes in mainstream stuff. Fucking porn, I've always been fully clothed.
That is awesome. Okay, guys, we got to wrap up the show. This has been Drinking with Authors. Again, I've drunk quite a bit of this bottle.
That is not the label.
Yeah. No, I know. I was just looking at how much I was doing. No, that's the label. Blueberry cinnamon cordial from Skunk Brothers Spirits. You can find them under Skunk Brothers Spirits, or they're a new sponsor. Okay, so I've been your host, Erica Lance. This is my first one doing the sponsor thing, so I'm trying to remember where the fuck I'm supposed to throw it in, because they're amazing, but definitely check it out. My co-host today has been C.R. Rice, and our amazing guest that is so much fun has been Joe Filippone. And guys, we will see you next time.